Hi, I'm Leslie Maddox, and I like to get into the nitty-gritty of homeschooling because I believe it's the details that can make the difference between a good and a bad day. Today, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of our science journey this year. I'm going to give you a mid-year update of how science has been going for us. I can tell you, starting out, I made a couple of mistakes that really affected my plans, what my plans had been. So I'm going to share those mistakes with you, what we're going to do going forward, and if you stick to the end, I'll share a resource with you that's free to you that hopefully can help you in your homeschool. All right, so starting off with what our plan for science have been this year. If you've seen my curriculum choices video, you'll know that my plan for this year had been to unschool science. There were a lot of reasons for that, but generally I wanted to give my fourth grader, my oldest, a chance to pursue some of his interests in science before I get him into a little more structured learning next year or the year after that. So I wanted to give him a chance to do more interest-led learning. I also wanted to teach him how to learn. It doesn't matter how smart you are, and my son he's pretty bright, but no matter how smart you are, you still got to learn how to learn. There's always going to be something that maybe doesn't come as easy to you as something else. And I feel this is an area that isn't given enough attention as far as education goes. Our students are given textbooks to read, and their learning is managed for them. They're just expected to go with it, and that's fine. Sometimes that's the way you have to do things, and for some subjects, especially foundational subjects, just starting out, that's preferable, I think. But there needs to come a point where there's a transition from here's what you're going to learn and here's how you're going to learn it, to okay, you want to learn this new thing, how are you going to do that? That there needs to be that transition before adulthood, so that when my son is a grown man, he will not balk at doing something new or learning something new because he has to do some learning. So I really wanted to get him started on that process. I thought about waiting until he was maybe middle school or high school to do that, but this past year I've really been thinking a lot about habits and about how the habits that are ingrained into our children early on, they just carry with them throughout their lives, whether or not they're good habits or whether they're good bad habits or bad habits. And so I wanted to get him started now on the good habit of being proactive and involved in his learning. All right, now that all that is said, how did it go? What were the mistakes that I made? Before I get into that, let me just explain the way I'm seeing unschooling. The definition I'm using for unschooling is that is interest-led, child-directed. And that means that the student, for me, that means that the student gets to choose what they want to learn and how they're going to learn it. Now, of course, this is my fourth grader. Since he's 9, I'm, as his parent and teacher, am plan to facilitate that learning for him, to help him along in that and give him direction, to train him how to go about doing that. But still, I wanted it to be child-led and interest-led. The first mistake I made as far as unschooling goes is that I decided to do science as a group subject in my homeschool. And that's how we've always done it. I have a first grader and a 4-year-old as well. And the 4-year-old, he just kind of goes along with whatever his brothers are doing. And so we've always done science and history together in order for me to be able to manage our time a little better. And also it's fun to do things as a group sometimes. But that's a problem when it comes to unschooling, because if it's child-led and interest-led, there's an inherent problem when you bring other people into the mix, because you're going to have to make some compromises. And so that was my first mistake, my first problem as far as unschooling goes. The other mistake I made was choosing to use subscription boxes for our science activities. My plan had been to go to, there's a particular company I'd noticed that you could choose what subscription boxes you wanted, what topic you wanted to pursue, and that had been my plan, to sit with my kids and let them choose something. But when I went back to that website, it looked like they'd changed things so that you couldn't choose anymore. You had to just take whatever they supply. And so I started looking around some more. I ended up using Little Passport Science Expeditions, and it's the same situation. They send you a box once a month and on whatever topic they've chosen, and you do those projects. And as far as the boxes themselves, I was pretty happy with them for the most part. I thought that the activities were fun. The additional activities they had, like the pencil activities and the little comic book and that kind of thing, was really nice and gave some variety to the activities being done. And the subjects were good. We did a box about forensic science, and that was something I never would have thought to do with my kids at this age, so that was fun. And then we just did a box on, we're just finishing one up on sound. And so as far as the learning goes, that's been going well. You know, we use the boxes, but then I also found supplemental materials like on Teachers Pay Teachers and just kind of looking on the internet to round out the learning a little bit, and so that all of my kids could participate. Because as far as the boxes go, I felt like they were geared more toward like my 9-year-old. But I wanted my other two to be involved, so I found supplemental materials so that we could all do some things together. And the learning went well. I mean, even my 4-year-old the other day at a birthday party, my father asked him, you know, what have you been learning in school? And of course, you know, right off he's like, oh, I don't know. He couldn't think of anything. So I said, well, how about science? And so he remembered about sound, and he described very clearly how sound waves travel through the ear and, you know, send messages to the brain. And I didn't even know that he knew that well. So even my 4-year-old was learning. So as far as the learning goes, I would say that's a success. But as far as the unschooling goes, it was a big failure because it wasn't child-led and child-directed. I mean, I wasn't even choosing the subjects for the boxes. Little Passports was, and that's fine, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And besides them choosing the subject, instead of my son then choosing activities to do, I made a unit study out of it. So instead, it ended up being unit studies that we're doing instead of the unschooling that I'd hoped to attempt. So success in learning, but failure in my original intent. All right, so the question now is, what was I going to do going forward? Was I going to just give up the whole unschooling idea and maybe try another year? Or was I going to change things up? And I decided that I wanted to pursue unschooling with my oldest. I feel the benefits were worth the attempt, at least one iteration of it. And so I decided to pursue that with him. I'll get back to that in just a minute. Let me explain that with my younger two. Well, you know, with my 4-year-old, he just kind of follows along with what his brothers do. But with my first grader, I didn't feel that unschooling with him was really necessary. He's happy to do whatever, you know, he's interested in whatever science focus we study, because he's a first grader and there's a lot for him to learn. I felt there's a lot of foundational learning that he needed to have as far as science goes. So for him, I decided to do what I did last year with him, which was interactive notebooks. Carson DeLosa has some really nice science interactive notebooks, and I have the kindergarten version right now, and I'm going to purchase the first grade version. And you can get the ebooks online and purchase them and download them. That way you can print out whatever pages you need. The notebooks cover various kind of general topics that a child that age would study, like, you know, weather and habitats and that type of thing. For each interactive notebooking page, there's some guidance to the teacher for maybe some activities to do to explain the concept. There's a notebooking page, which my kids love. They love all the little lift the flaps and little spinny things and all the little things that you do in notebooking pages. They love that kind of thing. And then there's ideas for some ways that the child can kind of process what they've learned on the facing page, the back of the previous page. So for example, if he's studying habitats, then on the facing page, after he's done everything else, he would draw like an ocean or a forest and some little animals that he thinks live in that habitat and explain why. And my first grader loves that kind of thing. I let him use whatever materials are in the schoolroom, stickers, stamps, markers, whatever. and he has fun with it. And he'll sometimes spend a long time on that page, and that's what we want, right? For him to be processing what he's learned. So I decided to just go back to that with him because he really enjoys that. All right, now back to the unschooling with my 4th grader. With him, I decided to pursue it, but I knew that I would need to have some structure around it, maybe sort of as a crutch to help him to know how to go about learning something. And so I created a little printable for him. At the top of the printable, there's a place for him to decide on the topic, and we had a discussion about how it can't be too general. Like, the first thing he said was technology. I said, well, that's a little bit too general. So he narrowed it down a little bit to electronics. So we're using that as a topic for this first iteration of this unschooling attempt. And then I put a place for him to write a couple of questions, because for me, I feel that I get a lot of learning out of asking questions, and I think especially for science, that's a good way to go about learning something. Figuring out how to ask a good question and then going and looking for the answers to those questions. There's a lot of learning happens in that. So I had him come up with a couple of questions, and then the rest of the printable is for brainstorming different activities that he can do to learn about that topic and to answer those questions. Put categories for reading, watching, playing, creating, writing, and then teaching. Some of those topics, some of those categories can overlap, and this isn't meant to be like a hard and fast rule, like you got to do something from each category. I was kind of hoping to do that, but I realized that a lot of them overlap. So that's not where the value lies in that printable. It's where the value lies is as a brainstorming tool to get him started thinking about. It's like, okay, what's a book that I can read about that will help me learn about this? What's something I can watch? We watch a lot of kids' educational shows, like Magic School Bus and all. They have my kids love those, and they learn a lot from those. And what's the way that I can play to learn about this? A game or a kid or activity. So right away we remembered that we had snap circuits, so he could get more into the snap circuits to learn about electronics. And he got some for Christmas. He received some Little Bits kits, so we're going to be doing those. What's something that he can write to learn about electronics? Maybe it could be as simple as writing a 3-sentence summary every day of what he learned. Or it could be as complicated as writing a story if he wanted to, which he probably won't because he's not into that. But that's just another way to learn. And it's something that he could write. It's something that he could create, a model or a scratch program, or even a chart or a diagram where he organizes some of the data that he's gathered, or something along those lines. And then the teach aspect, I just wanted him to have a way to share what he's learned. I've been kind of enamored by the idea of a one-room schoolhouse. I love how in a one-room schoolhouse, older students gain experience in leadership and mentorship by helping out the younger students. And since we basically have a one-room schoolhouse situation going on here in our home, I've been wanting my oldest son to kind of spread his wings a little bit in that way, and helping out with his younger brothers, or teaching them things that he's learned, and maybe gaining a little bit of leadership skills in that way. But also because you really learn something well when you have to teach it. So we'll brainstorm ways that he can share what he's learned with them. We didn't go through all those categories starting off. We just went through a few. And my thought is we'll just kind of come back and forth to that as time progresses. So that's my initial plan, that we'll brainstorm ways for him to learn, and then pursue some of those. I had to decide how we were going to implement that plan, and there's probably a lot of ways you could do it. You could stick that printable with all the brainstorming on a bulletin board, or put it in a binder. That's what we're going to do. He wrote out his ideas, and then I ended up typing them up in there and putting them in his binder. And my plan is to highlight the ideas that are ready to go, like the books that we have or videos that we can watch or the kits that we have. And then when it's a day that we're doing science, I can tell them, hey, pick one of the things I've highlighted and do that activity, and then maybe write a little summary about it, and then you can put a sticker next to it when he's done. I've also created a form for him to fill out each day that he does science, to put the date and what he did that day. For example, we have a book about electricity, and when he gets to that, he'll probably read just a couple of pages a day. You know, he's not going to finish that in one day, so he can put it on his record of work. On this day, I read these pages, and maybe I wrote a summary about what I learned. And that way, that helps him, that teaches him that kind of responsibility of being an active learner, but also it helps me so that when I'll eventually go and transfer all that into my online lesson planner, because I print all that out at the end of the year for our records. So that helps me as well to know that he's writing down what he's been doing, you know, we're not going to lose anything there. I also gave him a page with areas with space to write down questions that he has as he's learning. My experience has been when you're learning about something that if you really get into it, you get more questions, new questions, and it could even be questions that are off topic, but it just kind of gets your mental juices flowing and you start getting more questions, and I don't want to lose those. So as he comes up with questions, like if he comes and asks me a question, or we're talking about what he's learning and he comes up with a question, I can tell him, hey, go write that down in your binder, and maybe we can do, you know, when you're done learning about electronics, maybe you can study about that, or, you know, even before then, you can go and pursue the answers to that. So that's what we're trying. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if it's too much for him right now, but we're gonna give it a go. I'll pare it down if I need to. I don't need him to be able to do all those things right now, the record keeping and writing the questions and all the activities. I really just want him to learn about something that he's interested in and to have fun doing it. And then as we get older, we can grow more into managing his learning a little more. So that's the plan. If you're interested in the printable that I was talking about, I'm making it available to you for free on my website. Just look in the description box below and you'll find the link to go to the blog post and you can download it. You can use it for unschooling like we're doing, or really you could even use it to plan unit studies yourself. This is how I plan out any unit study we do, whether it's science or history. I look for learning activities, different types of learning activities and different categories, so that we can cover the same information in different ways. And I find like with my kids, at least, that helps the learning to stick a little bit better when they see the same information over and over again, but are interacting with it in different ways. So go ahead and grab that printable now. You never know, even if you don't need it right now, you might find a use for it in the future when you're planning maybe a summer unit study, or when you're doing your planning for next school year. Well, thanks for watching. Be on the lookout for other homeschool update videos where I go over other changes that we're making and some successes and failures that we've experienced so far this year and how we're handling it for the rest of this school year. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.